I'm Greg Szulgit, and I welcome you to Unlike this video log. As a scientist, I think that one of the ways you can tell good science is that there is a consensus among good scientists in the data. So, for example, it's enough for me to believe that climate change is happening because of humans to know that approximately 99% of all climate scientists think that it is, based on their interpretations. But is this a good argument? Because as a teacher, one of the things I love doing with students is pointing out times in history when there's that 1%, those Mavericks, who saw something new and changed everything. So how do we know whether those 1% of the climate scientists, whether or not they're crackshots, really getting it right, or just crackpots? Well, here's how. Science does have Mavericks. All fields have Mavericks, and we need Mavericks. So what am I talking about as a Maverick? I think a Maverick is somebody who really thinks outside of the box, pushes the bounds. In business, it might be someone like Richard Branson. In science, it can be somebody, Einstein, Galileo, somebody seeing something new. How do you know, then, what to do next? Well, when they present the data and present their arguments, others will see it and either confirm it or not. And then you look at what that Maverick does with that information. So, somebody who completely ignores the information, not a Maverick, a crackpot. Now, if we look at someone like John Snow, shown here, in the mid-19th century, there was a major cholera epidemic in London. And John Snow, as a Maverick, came up with this idea that maybe it's because people are drinking contaminated water. Now, germ theory wasn't even around at this point. People didn't really know what that might mean. And he was a Maverick, and this was a really radical idea. But it turns out when he gathered the data, others had to agree with him, and thus the field of epidemiology was born. Let's compare him with someone like Andrew Wakefield, the guy who pretty much single-handedly came up with this idea that there's some link between autism and vaccines. Now, when he first came up with this idea, he saw some patterns in what he was doing as a clinician. He was a Maverick, and this was great. He said, hey, I think there's a link here. And people looked into it and said, whoa, this is really important. And hundreds of scientists got on board, and there were conferences, and this was an important thing to look at. Everybody looked at it, and finally someone said, you know what? You're doing your statistics wrong. You're not coming. The reason we can't, because they all tried to duplicate it and tried to find that information. The reason we don't see it, and the reason that you're seeing is clearly the statistics are wrong. And everybody then said, oh yes, all right, we understand statistics, we see why this is wrong. And instead of Wakefield saying, sorry, my bad, because that happens in science all the time, he said, no, la, you're all wrong, and continued to say that to the point that his paper on this was literally rescinded, which almost never happens. Rescinded from the journal. It now has a big rejected or rescinded across it. They actually and his medical license was taken away, and he fled to the United States, where he continues to cause deaths, many, many deaths. He's a crackpot. He was a Maverick when he came up with it, but he didn't listen to when it came back to him, the obvious conclusions. Whereas other Mavericks come up with ideas, throw them out there. If people come back and say, no, this is why it doesn't work, they say, hey, all right, fine, I'm going to move on to the next idea and think outside the box again. And we really need those people. Those people are great. So, in my mind, that's how you can tell crack shot from crackpot, is how they listen to their critics. And if they simply don't and go la, 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 then there's a major problem. And that applies in science, it applies in business, it applies in politics. Keep an eye out for it. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, you've taken a few moments of your day to actually listen to what I had to say, and I respect you for that. If you want to hear more, please subscribe by clicking the button, or you can always go to my webpage. Thank you.